You've seen our boom picks for this week. You know who we like at start sit, but who are the guys who are those unsuspecting heroes who might carry your team in week 1 of the fantasy playoffs? We're about to give you our under the radar picks that could lead you to victory. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre. He's Chris. We're here to give you some players that we think could be, well, kind of those hidden gems, some sleeper picks, guys you're on the fence about that we think could go off and have those week-winning potential games. All right, Chris, who is your first playoff hero for week 15?
Well, I'm going to, I guess they're still my team, the Commanders, for as much as I can like a team. But I'm going to the Commanders, and I'm going with Brian Robinson. I guess in this rematch against the Giants, right? The last time the Commanders played it was the Giants, and the Giants have played a team since then. But a rematch for Washington against the Giants. Now Washington at home. Giants' run defense is not very good. The last time these two teams met, which was just a couple weeks ago, Brian Robinson had 21 carries, 96 yards, also caught 2 passes for another 15 yards. I think this is another big Brian Robinson game, could get it close to 100 yards. Always has a chance to score. Not going to, give you a lot in the passing game, but you'll take 1 or 2 catches. Washington's defense has been really, really good. They've been leaning on that defense, leaning on this running game. Brian Robinson has looked good before the bye. Running back is a wasteland, right? You might be desperate at running back. If you are, look at Brian Robinson. I think he'll have a nice game here in Week 15.
Yeah, you got to feel pretty good about him. He's getting stronger as the season goes on, and that's a good thing, coming off a week of rest as well. All right, so this might seem like an easy pick at first. I'm going to go with the running back against the Texans. So I'm going to say that even though last week Jerick McKinnon was the guy who went off, I'm going with Isaiah Pacheco because the Houston defense is still bad against the running game. You saw Pollard and Zeke both have good games. And despite the fact that you saw McKinnon a lot more involved, that was as a receiver, not a runner. They actually had to pass the ball quite a bit because Denver somehow scored points. I'm not expecting that this week. I know Kansas City's defense hasn't been great, but Houston, like they had their one moment last week, didn't happen. It's definitely not happening this time. Pacheco has been really good, even though he's not putting up gaudy numbers for fantasy purposes. Over the last 5 games, he's averaging 79 yards per game on the ground, averaging 5 yards per carry. If he gets even just 15 rush attempts in this game, I think he easily goes for 100 yards. He could definitely score a touchdown. I feel like he's one of those guys that now you're kind of on the fence about. Do I really start him? Do I really want to trust him in the playoffs? Yes, you do. His ceiling is massive. All right, who's another hidden hero that you got for Week 15?
Welcome back, Elijah Moore. Yes, I think we can say relatively safely that he is back. 10 targets in Week 14. And look, it doesn't matter to me if it's Mike White or Joe Flacco. As long as it's not Zach Wilson, I am fine with Elijah Moore in my lineup this week. And it's not just because of what he did in Week 14. It wasn't like he had a huge game in Week 14. He did get that target share. He did have, 6 catches. You like to see that. It's because of the matchup. It's Detroit. Detroit is terrible against, all wide receivers, but they're especially bad against slot wide receivers. They got destroyed out of the slot last week. Jefferson picked up a lot of his yards out of the slot, but I remember we had a question, I think it was on our Start Sit show, which by the way will be on Friday this week, not Saturday because we have 3 games, but on our Start Sit show, somebody asked a question. They had really deep wide receivers, and one of the choices was KJ Osborne. And I said, I kind of like KJ Osborne this week because the Vikings have been playing him as their slot receiver, and the Lions have been bad against the slot. What did he do? 5 catches, had a touchdown, and that's KJ Osborne. If Elijah Moore gets 10 plus targets against this Lions defense, and he's also their slot guy, he should have a big game. We know he's got the talent, right? That hasn't been the issue. It's just been the usage. It looks like the usage is there. The matchup is there. I know it's probably terrifying putting Elijah Moore in your lineup, but if you're in a deeper league, like a 2 flex, a multiple flex league, I think Elijah Moore is a high upside flex play in Week 15.
Worth mentioning, Corey Davis did leave with an injury last game. If he's not playing, even more targets for both Wilson and Moore. So I'm going to talk also about Moore at wide receiver. Not the one you might think. It's Chris Moore of the Houston Texans. Now, he clearly benefited last week from the fact that Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins did not play. Well, you know what? There's a really good chance Brandon Cooks doesn't play and Nico Collins is going to be questionable. So we could still see him as the lead guy. But even so, I already talked about this game. I'm expecting a blowout. I don't think there's going to be any big surprise here. Chiefs will be front running, which means Texans will be digging from behind. I think we're going to see less of these little contrived Jeff Driscoll runs and trying to slow the clock down. They're just going to have to pass the ball more, whether they like it or not. Look, even last week, when they were somehow in positive game script all game long against the Cowboys, Chris Moore went for 10 catches and 124 yards. I mean, this Chiefs defense has been actually really bad against wide receivers too. Over the last few weeks, they've been bottom 5. And so, the game script will be in favor of the passing game for Houston. At least I feel decent enough with Davis Mills, as opposed to Kyle Allen, that he can get the ball to Moore as he did last week. So Moore, one of these guys that, again, you don't want to necessarily chase points from the week before. You can't feel great about him, but I think his upside is what we have already seen and possibly a little bit more. All right, one more guy you think is unsung hero for week 15 in the playoffs.
Yeah, I talked about Elijah Moore as an upside flex. If you need another upside flex, I would look at Michael Gallup. Going against Jacksonville, I mean, we've picked on Jacksonville a lot this season, this week. No reason not to. And I'm pretty encouraged by what I've seen by Michael Gallup the last few weeks. Remember Thanksgiving, he kind of started to break out a little bit. And then week 13 there, caught 2 touchdowns. And then last week against Houston, didn't really do a lot. But he did have a touchdown that was kind of knocked out of his hands. Almost a catch, came down with it. Defender made a great play, put his shoulder on the ball, knocked it out. So he's getting chances. He's getting chances to score. And when we're talking about guys like this, like you're not starting these guys because they're going to rack up, 100 plus yards probably, or, catch 10 plus passes. Touchdowns are a big thing for guys in this range. And Michael Gallup has that potential. And against Jacksonville, he could always hit on a home run, on a big play. So again, kind of like Elijah Moore. I mean, I feel better about Elijah Moore. But if you need, a deeper upside flex play, take a gamble on Michael Gallup. Everything is there for him to have a big game.
And that's the thing. It's all about the upside here. So Gallup definitely has it. Well, at the running back position, we already talked about a couple of guys. Look, this is somebody who really is flying under the radar because the Rams are definitely not the same as last year. But Cam Akers is still the guy there. And yes, I think he has some boom potential this week. And a guy that you really have a hard time, justifying putting in your lineup. But let's take a closer look. Again, as rough as it's been for them this year, Cam Akers is clearly the guy there in the backfield. Kyren Williams is a non-factor at this point. Akers, the last couple of games, has had 17 and 12 carries. And he scored 3 touchdowns over the past 2 games. Now, I know touchdowns can be hard to chase. It can be fluky. But going against the Packers this particular week, you know what? The Packers' run defense is actually getting worse as the season goes on. They haven't been good at all, but over the last 4 games, you know what? They have given up 7 touchdowns just to running backs. Cam Akers has scoring upside. You can't deny that. And I know you might laugh at this, but, well, at least we can say with Akers over the past 4 games for him, he's averaging 4 yards per carry. And that's not anything to, write home about. But compared to his season average, you look how terrible he was. Yeah, he was terrible at the beginning of the year. You look at his season-long average. Yeah, it's pretty much the worst that there is. But he's back to being an adequate runner with scoring upside. And he's getting the volume. And it's a great matchup. So while I can't assume he'll go for 100-plus yards, I feel pretty good about Akers getting me double digits. And he's a guy that I can throw into my lineup in a week where I want to make sure I'm getting a decent point total. All right, those are some of the players we're targeting this week to help us win in the playoffs. We want to help you win. You can do that by checking out our Week 15 playlist, start, sit, advice, and more, because you want to advance and win.